right, good morning. Mike Ritzema here with i3 Business Solutions and Natalie Suarez from ConnectWise. And we're going to talk today about practical use of information cybersecurity threat intelligence for your small business. This is an area that Natalie is passionate about. Natalie and I have been working together for about a year. She's the Director of Cybersecurity Task Force at ConnectWise, one of our primary cybersecurity partners. She started her career as a software developer, has 20 plus years of experience in IT and cybersecurity. She joined ConnectWise with their acquisition of their SIM solution, Perch, Security Information Event Management, which is a very complex business. Previously supported the Department of Defense Intelligence Analysts, which has to be very interesting. And she supports managed service providers and cybersecurity intelligent analysts at ConnectWise. She's a cybersecurity educator and speaker. She's passionate about cybersecurity information. We've been working together for over a year. Natalie coordinates and runs and moderates the monthly 2 to 4 hour peer group with cybersecurity specialists from all over the world, Australia, Europe, and America. I really respect her knowledge, and I'll turn it over to Natalie right now.
Thank you, Mike. I don't know if I can live up to that intro, but I hopefully can. So let's go ahead and jump right in. And to lay the groundwork, I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about ConnectWise. So just so you know, cybersecurity, we always seem to think about the technology aspect. And if cybersecurity defense was simply about technology, we would have that solved by now, because there's lots of smart people in this industry like Mike and his team, and a lot of us here at ConnectWise, and that would be really simple if it was all a technology problem. But it's actually all about people, processes, and technology. So ConnectWise does partner with i3 Business Solution on the technology aspect, as well as these 3 other pillars: expertise, value, and community. As Mike stated, we usually see each other about once a month when I'm not traveling, and I facilitate one of the groups where we teach our MSP partners how to take the cybersecurity expertise that we offer and the tools that we offer and apply them to protect your small businesses. So go ahead and go to the next slide, Mike. All right, so we're going to focus on cybersecurity because that's where you're going to find your cybersecurity threat intelligence. So we do try to start always by identifying risk, the same way i3 identifies risk when they talk to their clients. ConnectWise identifies risk when we talk to our MSP partners. And as they are more secure, that naturally makes you more secure. So we take that same methodology we apply to your technology service providers and apply it down to you. And then cybersecurity threat intelligence lives within our Security Operations Center. So ConnectWise does have a global security operations center, and we'll talk a little bit more about what tasks they perform. But as Mike said earlier, they do work with the SIM, the Security Incident and Event Management. They also work with endpoint detection and response and managed detection and response, as well as our security software as a service security offerings. All right, Mike.
Yeah, I'll move to the next slide and I'll jump in here and say, you know, exactly that information, that threat intelligence that you collect relative to end users and your partners like i3 Business Solutions so important. And one of the things that ConnectWise made us do, I think it's important to every small business out there. You guys did an audit and assessment of i3 internally and gave us an execution plan. Very informative. And I think for any small business watching this webinar, you know, one of your biggest threats is vendors or software providers that have access to your network. And we marched through i3 and made all kinds of improvements and changes, including putting EDR on every single endpoint that's connected to the network, including multi-factor authentication on every single system that has any information in it about our customers, including SIM, very expensive, security information event management, incident event management, draped over the whole thing. And so that's part of the partnership. That's part of the threat intelligence you apply not only to partners, but to end users, right, Natalie?
Oh, exactly. And you guys may be asking yourselves, why am I talking about the cybersecurity portfolio when you came here to talk about threat intelligence? And the reason I'm doing that is because our threat intelligence that we gather goes into every one of those cybersecurity products. It goes into assessment and identify, to build questions, to help decide, where you may have potential vulnerabilities and how you can properly manage security versus the ability to get things done. We don't want security to be an adversary. We want you still to be able to do your jobs, to still be able to access a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting or read your email, but in a secure way. It also makes it into all of our other tools, the EDR, MDR, SIM, and the SaaS offering. All of that threat intelligence makes it in there. One very important thing I want to address when I'm talking about threat intelligence is I want you to understand that threat intelligence is not data. So if you have like a CVE, that's a bit of data, right? So, critical vulnerabilities that are enumerated. So, exactly, this piece of software has this particular vulnerability. This is how you patch it type of thing. That is just a piece of data. What the SOC actually does is they take that piece of data and they analyze it. And when they analyze it, they determine how could a bad actor take advantage of this information? What should the MSP or the small business do to mitigate that threat? And when I'm talking intelligence, I'm talking that whole package. I think, like Mike said, I'm very passionate about intelligence, and I feel very strongly that there's a huge difference between data and intelligence. Until you do something with that data, it is not intelligence. And we are truly taking that data, turning it into intelligence, and feeding it back through the system in both automatic and manual ways. Unfortunately, it can't all be automated. And that is how we protect our partners like i3 Business Solutions, and they in turn protect you. So what is in our Security Operations Center? Well, it's made up of a number of team members. It's made up of analysts, engineers, the Cybersecurity Research Unit, which I'm really going to spend a lot of time talking to you about because that's where a lot of that high fidelity threat intelligence comes out of, and our new incident response team. So last year alone, in 2021, our SOC responded to over 10 million threats. I don't mean 10 million pieces of data. I would say the data is probably almost innumerable at this point. But 10,000 actual threats, which could result in breaches if the appropriate steps were not taken. The other thing our SOC does is, because our SOC are the security experts, they actually, you could think of them as a noise filter. What they do is they take in billions and billions of pieces of data. They sift through all that data, of course, both automatic and manual. They have very specific processes. They're very highly credentialed and experienced. They know what to do with the data. And last year alone, they cut out 97% of the noise. So if you think about that, if out of cutting 97% of the noise, that remaining 3% was over 10 million plus threat responses, they are very hard workers, very smart individuals. And one of their main products is they provide threat intelligence to protect our partners. And as they're protecting our partners are protecting you. So go ahead to the next slide. So I want to talk about specifically the Cybersecurity Research Unit. We call them the CRU because that sounds cooler than saying Cybersecurity Research Unit. And so part of what they do is, all of what they do is threat hunting, threat discovery, threat research, which all results in high fidelity threat intelligence. We automate as much of that as possible. It all feeds back into every single tool that ConnectWise provides. We share that through communities. We share that through tools, we share that through forums, we share that through reports on our website. So there's many ways to consume this information. One thing I do want to point out when I'm talking about here is part of what they do is they discover new threats. There's a variety of ways they can discover new threats. And one of those is we are actually part of the Microsoft Active Protections Program. This is actually a very exclusive program, which typically only accepts enterprise facing software providers. As you know, we don't support high enterprise, Fortune 500 and Fortune 50 companies. We typically support MSPs. We are the only MSP platform that is part of that program. And why should you care about that? The reason you should care about that is because that gives our threat research unit early access to information on Microsoft vulnerabilities so that they are able to take that data, they can turn it into threat intelligence by figuring out, okay, how could this be exploited? They actively, I'm so glad they're on our side because they do figure out how to exploit this information, and then they'll do write-ups on the information. They will put it back into our tools to protect all of our customers. And we get all of this before it's ever made available to the public. So in our large base of partners, they will actually go in and they have automated and manual means that they go in and they look at all the threats that we are seeing across customers. They look for anomalous activity through both network detection. I don't think I mentioned about RDS, our intrusion detection system, which is part of the Perch SIEM under ConnectWise. They will take that, they'll do active investigations. So we work closely with our partners. Our CRU and our SOC is available not only via electronic means, which is all the new rage, but we do things like pick up that good old fashioned phone and talk to customers. And as a result of that, one of our partners actually submitted to the Cyber Research Unit a threat called Infinity Gauntlet. The partner shared a sample because between them and the Cyber Research Unit, they saw activity that looked suspicious in the environment, but it wasn't triggering against any known threat actors or known values. And we were able to upload that information into all of our tools, particularly our SIEM and our EDR, a full 48 hours before any of our competitors were able to do that. I think our Cyber Research Unit really sets us above because with cybersecurity, the faster you are to mitigate threats, the more secure you are. Cybersecurity is not a field where you can just sit and wait for someone else to tell you the information. You have to actively be hunting. So yes, go ahead.
So Natalie, yeah, I think what this looks like to me is, the Cyber Research Unit, the intelligence, the information feeds down to us, the partner, in the monthly peer group calls. And that feeds our framework, which is, for us, it's CIS version 8, which is built on NIST, which feeds execution. And I think the challenge in West Michigan, over 100 technology companies and across America, is it's really neat to say I'm a cybersecurity specialist and then just throw a couple of pieces of software out there. But what you're doing is taking this data that becomes threat intelligence and helping partners build a framework that actually delivers cybersecurity.
Exactly. A couple more examples. On their own, they also found they were able to name an actual threat, which I think is so cool. They're so much cooler than me. We should have had one of them on this call. They named Parcel Rat, or Rat is a remote access Trojan. In March of 2022, they also published a report on a new Microsoft vulnerability, which has a CVE assigned, which is, like I said, is just a way to enumerate vulnerabilities. It's a remote code execution called Felina, uses MS Microsoft diagnostic tools versus using macros to infect the host. Another bit of threat intelligence, which is super important, is we create profiles on threat actors so that It's never possible to automatically respond to every threat. So it's really important, and ConnectWise feels it's very important to also let our partners know these are the kind of things that these threat actors do. So not only are we looking to see if we see any of these indicators of compromise, but our partners are also equipped. Like Mike said, we do share these in the monthly calls. We share them via reports. We share them back into our tools via automated means. And that way, not only are we making our tools able to respond, but we're educating our partners like i3 Business Solutions, so they may actually notice something before even we do. So that's the beauty of this partnership. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So I wanted to talk about this real quick. Not only is i3 partnering with ConnectWise, but they're also partnering with an information sharing organization. And the reason this is important is because the CompTIA ISAO, and you may recognize the CompTIA name because they do provide a lot of security certifications. But in this context, we're talking about the threat intelligence they provide. They also do some of the work at a smaller scale than what ConnectWise does. It is a not-for-profit organization, and what they do is they create cybersecurity threat intelligence. They provide access to forums where Mike can not only reach out to like-minded colleagues through the connections here at ConnectWise, he can also do so through the CompTIA ISAO, through their forums, through their automated feeds of cyber threat intelligence, which, oh, by the way, do also feed into the ConnectWise tools we provide. And they do provide analysis, and we do coordinate with, we at ConnectWise also coordinate with the CompTIA ISAO. All right, so let's go to the next slide and try to wrap this up because I feel like I need to speak faster. So why should you care about all of this? Well, let me give you just a few statistics because I could give you an entire presentation on all of these statistics. So we know business email compromise has been a threat vector for a very long time, but interestingly enough, one of the sources that we go to here at ConnectWise is the FBI Internet Crime Unit, and they publish an annual report. And last year, well, it's published this year, but it's statistics from last year, 2021. We had a new player come into the marketplace here, into the cybersecurity marketplace. So not only has business email compromise scheme continue to grow as threat actors become smarter and smarter, it was 31% of all threats reported to the FBI last year, and that's only reported to that Internet Crime Unit, not local offices, not things that were not reported. Those complaints added up to about $120,000 per complaint. I don't know of many small businesses that could survive a $120,000 financial hit. In the US alone, that was about $2.4 billion in losses altogether. But business email compromise percentage-wise actually went down in 2021, which sounds like good news till you look at the figures. And also when you say, well, why did it go down? Well, it went down because cryptocurrency became a new player in the market. And when I'm talking cryptocurrency, I'm not talking about paying for your ransoms from ransomware. What I'm talking about is these bad guys actually doing something called SIM swapping and other methods. And when they SIM swap, that simply means they basically clone your phone. And when they clone your phone, they get access to things like your crypto wallet. Crypto, as we all know, is very distributed, not regulated. It's not like if someone steals your debit card or your credit card, you just make a phone call and you get your money back eventually. With cryptocurrency, once they clean out your wallet, you might as well just say goodbye. And the interesting fact is that crime increased 7-fold from 2020, resulted in $1.6 billion in losses last year. And then this last little graphic on the side, this is just to kind of show you the breakdown of what we saw here at ConnectWise across our partners as far as malicious data breaches, that 10 billion that I was talking about earlier. And with that, this is the why you should care, because we are following current crimes. We are following the market. We know who the top threat actors are. We know the top threats to your businesses, and we're educating our partners on those threats. And they're educating you by doing things like security awareness training. Like I said, people, processes, and technology, not just technology. We need all three. And with that, I will hand it back over to my buddy, Mike.
Yeah, let's just talk about that a little bit as we wrap up. I mean, again, the information that you're pulling together and the way that ConnectWise organizes it allows us to deliver cybersecurity solutions that are effective. You know, I say, are you the small business shooting in the dark? But equally important is the technology partner you're working with shooting in the dark. Because given this information, what ConnectWise is doing is, again, organizing this into a framework. And at i3, it's built around NIST and CIS version 8. CIS version 8, a spreadsheet with 172 items on a checklist, which I always say is fine if you're in West Michigan, Steelcase, or Herman Miller, or Hayworth for that matter. But for a small business, which are the most important? And this information, the research intelligence, feeds that. And so in our partnership with ConnectWise, you know, we know, ConnectWise knows, and you feed that to us so that i3 knows. And then in these monthly calls, we're continually improving our cybersecurity services built on that. We are taking your data, turning it into intelligence, and then into services that actually effectively, again, it's not the technology like you said earlier. Oh, load a piece of EDR, everything's fine. No, it's the process and the people behind that are important. And that's I think, what separates technology companies as they apply, as they, you know, technology marches on. How are we going to keep up with it? That's essentially what we're talking about here, right, Natalie?
Oh, exactly. And I think the most important thing is we are looking at all of this information through a small business lens. We're not looking at it through a huge enterprise lens. And that's how we're, I would use the word operationalizing. That's how we're operationalizing that threat intelligence to protect our partners and their clients.
That's beautiful. So to wrap up, you know, thank you, Natalie, for this time. And the mandate is to the business owner, to the CEO, the CFO, is to know your risk. And ConnectWise knows, they're feeding it to us, and we're trying to feed it to you, is know your risk and own your risk. We, technology partners, technology service companies, do not own your risk. You own your financial, physical, and technological risk. So know what that risk is and own that risk. I thank you for joining us today. Track us down via email, phone call, Twitter, LinkedIn. Heck, we're out there. Natalie, thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.